Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Breakfast with Leaders. And I'm about to introduce you to Kendra Frew, who is our speaker for today. Welcome to all the people online and to the people in the room. It's lovely to have everyone, and thank you for making an effort to come and see us today. Before we begin, I'd like to take the opportunity to acknowledge the traditional owners on the land in which we meet today, which is, for me, the Larrakia people, and pay my respects to elders past and present. Now, we have been a couple of minutes late because we have had some technical glitches in the room, so I'm not going to spend too long on the introduction, and I'm going to hand straight over to Kendra, who's going to speak today and tell us some very entertaining stories, I hope, about some of her experiences as an employment lawyer, although she will be very clear to tell you that she is not a lawyer, but I'll let her do that in just a moment. So thank you all again, and we will look forward to speaking to you at the end. We will open for questions both in the room and on the floor at the end. Good morning, everybody. Can everyone see me? I can't see. The people in the room can see me. Absolutely. I'm not a ghost. But I can't see myself. So from the outset, I apologize if I move out of screen. I do tend to move around a little bit. So just bear with me. Again, it is Friday the 13th. So the technical glitches were going to happen without a doubt. But anyway, thank you very much for being with me today. I know everyone's living very busy lives, and taking an hour out of your very busy schedules is much appreciated by myself. Now, let's hope this works. Okay, so my presentation today is 30 years of workplace wisdom. What could possibly go wrong? Well, pretty much everything, because it's kept me in a job for 30 years, to be honest. You might notice that there's a part 1 down the bottom. We actually have a part 2, and I believe that's in September. I'll talk about that at the end. But yeah, so this is just the start. And it's the title is a little bit intimidating. I'm not going to talk 30 years worth of experience, but I'm just going to talk about a couple of highlights. Again, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land, the Larrakia people, and pay my respects to the elders past and present. Fingers crossed this works. Yes, great. Okay. What we will cover today. So I've just got 3 topics that should take, around roughly an hour. Hopefully we'll have some time at the end for questions. But first of all, we're going to talk about secret recordings. Yes, they are real. Everybody, they're real. I know they're scary, but they're absolutely real. Bullying, what it is and what it isn't. There's a little bit of confusion at the moment out there about what bullying is. And those nasty, difficult conversations. So please have them. That's our topics for today. First, I need to put a little bit of a disclaimer out there. I am not a lawyer. I was a lawyer. I'm not currently holding a practicing certificate. So I'm not providing legal advice today. I'm speaking from my experience. Now, I don't know if people online can see my little I love HR badge. I've been in this industry for actually, this is my 31st year, which is, amazing. I love the profession. I can't imagine myself doing anything else, to be honest. It's just me now. It's in my blood. But saying that, I could be wrong. I might be wrong about things. This HR world is rapidly changing, and maybe I'm wrong. Usually right, but maybe I'm wrong. So please take what you will from this presentation. I hope there's some value. That's my intention for today. And I'll just talk about what I've noticed, a couple of stories, and then we'll finish up. So, okay, secret recordings at work. Now, legal stuff, but not legal advice. I need to stress that again. The legality of recording a conversation in Australia depends entirely on the jurisdiction that you're in. So, a little bit scary for NT people. and Victorian and Queensland. So there is no legislation prohibiting the recording of a private conversation as long as the person recording it is involved in that conversation and it meets the exceptions to record it, which I'll talk about on the next slide. So here, we're able to record if it meets the exceptions. By contrast, recording conversations without permission is prohibited in New South Wales, Tasmania, Western Australia, South Australia, and the ACT. So, it's just us three, us three states and territories that, we permit it, which a lot of people, when I say that I mention this, they get a little worried. They're like, oh, really? What? Without my consent, without my knowledge, without, it's in secret. And this, as you will see from an example that I provide, is really quite concerning. What I want to do before we go a little bit further is just put your hands up if you're an employer or manager. Right, okay. I can't see any hands on the screen, but majority of the people in the room are employers, managers, which is great because that's generally who I work with in my business. Employees are the ones generally doing the recordings, the secret recordings. So my example is when I had an employer client who came across the secret recording. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. But a little bit more legal advice. Sorry, not legal advice. A little bit of legislation before we move on. It's the Surveillance Devices Act that provides the exceptions to private publishing and communicating private conversations. So these are the exceptions which are relevant to what I deal with in the employment space. So if it's in the public interest or it's for protecting the lawful interests of the person making it. Lawful interests, that's the key term, element of this section. And or it's to communicate or publish in the course of a legal or disciplinary proceeding. So that's the employment space that we're working in. They're the exceptions. So an employee can record if it's considered, and as I said, this is not legal advice. You need to get legal advice on this, but if it's in the lawful interest of the person making the recording or if it's for a legal or disciplinary proceeding. So that's how employees can record.
Just clarifying, they can record anyway if it's all parties agree to.
Of course, yeah. This is secret. This is secret recordings without consent. Yeah. So I'll jump into the really the worst example that I've ever had in my whole career. Happened about 4 years ago. It was a discrimination case. So it wasn't in the Fair Work Commission. And this employee had made 78 recordings. 78 recordings. I nearly about fell off my chair when they all came through. Some of them were an hour long, and I listened to all of them. Totally premeditated by this staff member. About halfway through, I got to about 50 recordings, 50 hours down the track, and I could hear this sound, and I was like, what is that? At the start of every recording, there was this really weird sound. It was like I was like, it's happening on every recording. As I said, by the 50th recording, I worked out what it was. She was putting her phone in her pocket. I'm just going to step out of frame for a minute and show the audience. So I'll just describe what I did. Is the employee put the phone in her pocket, and the shoot sound was her moving towards the office or wherever she was going to have a meeting. She'd pressed record prior to entering her manager's office. So when I worked that out, I was like, oh, wow, that's very clever because there was no fumbling with the phone when she was in the office or, pushing record. It was premeditated. So saying that, the employer, her manager, had no idea, absolutely no idea. But again, she was doing this for her lawful interests. The main problem with it was that because they were an hour long, she was manipulating the conversation so that the manager would eventually say what she needed him to say. Right. So that was the flavour of the recordings. So, absolutely worst case scenario that I've ever seen. When it came to light, when the secret recordings came to light, and these were senior managers, very, very, director level managers, they had absolutely stunned that they were being recorded and devastated because, yes, they had been manipulated to say the things that she needed them to say for her discrimination claim. So heartbreaking, I had directors in tears with me because they just could not fathom that had happened. So how does the Fair Work Commission view secret recordings? Very dimly. They don't look on them kindly, right? There's a case, and I'll just talk about the case, a recent one, where it was it was an unfair dismissal case, matter of Karen Altham / Wooding and PKDK Adventures Proprietary Limited. It was 2024 matter. So in this case, the Commission, and I won't go into the details, we don't have time, but in this case, the Commission said that unless there is justification, a secret recording in the workplace is highly inappropriate. So they don't look on these secret recordings kindly. And it said that this can be the case even if the recording was legal. Okay? So they still, even if it's legal, they still consider them to be highly inappropriate. The clincher for the Commission and what was ruled in that case was that the secret recording itself constituted a valid reason for dismissal. So that unfair dismissal case failed. Yeah. But even if it's legal, this is how it's viewed. Okay? So the takeaway. Pretty straightforward. Expect to be recorded, even as an employee, but particularly as an employer. Expect to be recorded, especially if an employee is coming in unannounced. Like, these meetings weren't scheduled. They weren't scheduled disciplinary meetings. They were just, oh, have you got 5 minutes? An hour later, So this is what I tell everybody. Yeah, sorry, Anne, you've got your hand up?
Yeah, sorry. This is not in case they can't, but I'm just wondering, how did the person that was the manager in this particular case, did they get so frustrated with this person so ended up saying things they shouldn't have said? How does that come about?
Absolutely. That's exactly what happened. Have you got 5 minutes turns into 1 hour. Speaking to a person, an employer at a director level, they don't have an hour. Like, I've got things to do. I need, they were trying to be supportive and they were manipulated into saying what she needed them to say. And yeah, at the end, they were like, just get out of my office, please, please get out of my office. Okay, yeah, whatever you think. Yep, okay, yep, no worries. We'll talk about that later. And this went on 78 times. Yeah. So biggest takeaway for me, for employers, some employers do record maybe disciplinary meetings, and it's more so to ensure that there's procedural fairness in a disciplinary meeting. That's what I found when employers are recording. But employees are doing it for potentially unfair dismissal matters or, discrimination cases or something that's in their lawful interests or disciplinary matters. But whoever you are, expect to be recorded. If you are an employee making a recording, really consider if the secret recording aligns with the HR policies of the organisation, reflecting on how the Fair Work Commission views these secret recordings, because a secret recording ultimately damages the trust and confidence which is vital to an employment relationship. So yeah, really can think about why you're making a secret recording. And it sort of links to the difficult conversations, which we'll talk about later. I don't know, should I take questions now or at the end? It's just because of people probably won't hear from the audience anyway. I'll leave the questions to the end. So, okay, now. Is that because I did that? Good. All right. Let's move on to bullying. Oh, that B word. Everyone freaks out when someone says bullying. You're bullying me. I'm making light of it. I know bullying's a very, very serious matter. Absolutely, it's led to tragic circumstances. However, what I've noticed, probably in the last 5 years, is that the B word is just everyone's saying bullying, and it's a little frustrating for me because there's an actual definition of bullying, and a lot of people don't actually know what the definition is. And it's legislated. It's a definition, and it has to meet this definition, which is under Section 789F3 of the Fair Work Act, 2009 Commonwealth. Bullying at work occurs when a person or a group of people behaves unreasonably towards a worker or a group of workers at work. And, which is why I've highlighted that, and this happens more than once. And this creates a risk to health and safety. They're the three elements that have to meet a bullying claim for bullying to be substantiated. So, see that into your mind, because that takes away the fear of people just putting it out there. Oh, I'm being bullied. Now, let's look at the facts. Are you actually being bullied? Look, you might be, but you might not be, and I stress that again and again. There is a definition of bullying, and we need to understand it, remember it, educate employees on what the definition of is. So, bullying can include behaviours such as being aggressive or intimidating, using abusive or offensive language, mocking or humiliating someone, so making really off jokes and at someone's expense, holding initiation ceremonies, the military might be a little bit, I've heard lots of stories about that. Also, leaving some workers out of work-related events. Giving someone too much or too little work is also a form of bullying. Giving someone work above or below their skill level, so like maybe setting them up to fail. And not giving someone information that they need to do their job again, setting them up to fail. So these are unreasonable actions taken against an employee that could be found to be bullying. There's others, but these are some, probably the most common. Now, what bullying isn't, and this is probably where I have to educate most people on. Not all behaviour that makes you upset or anxious at work is bullying. So what I see a lot is when the disciplinary process is initiated. You're bullying me. You're bullying me. Ooh, no. And this reasonable management action is my favourite word. Reasonable management action. So reasonable is the term. Reasonable is the key term, which is a little bit nebulous and it all depends on the circumstances. But if there's reasonable management action, bullying is unlikely to be found. So, because managers need to be able to give feedback. So, if management action is reasonable, again, reasonable, and the way the manager takes the action is reasonable, all focused on reasonableness, which is determined on the circumstances. So, reasonable may include putting a worker on a performance improvement plan. Who's heard of one of them? Everybody in the room and probably everyone online. The good old PIP. I'll admit, I love a PIP. PIPs can work. They can work. I've seen them work. To PIP or not to PIP? That's the question. I'm for a PIP. A lot of people, PIPs take a lot of effort. They can take 6 to 8 weeks. A lot of energy, a lot of time, a lot of supervision, a lot of meetings, a lot of energy. But if an employee is underperforming, because it's only about performance. If it's not conduct. Conduct is separate. Performance, this is what a performance improvement plan focuses on, performance. If they're underperforming, then it's like a guide that you're guiding them to get to the standards that you need in their role. That's how I see a PIP. That's why I'm really positive about a PIP. I always encourage my employer clients to implement a PIP. There's a little bit of negativity. It's like, oh, you're just putting in a PIP to get me out of the organisation, justify a sacking. But I don't see PIPs like that. If there's genuine underperformance, that's how a structured process will move into, hopefully, improved performance. Now, if it goes the other way, there's potentially a justification for a dismissal, maybe, but it's a process. And I have a lot of employees that say, I'm on a PIP now, you're going to dismiss me. They're fearful. Get it. I get it. It's a stressful time. But if you're underperforming, it's like the employer assisting you to get to a standard that you need to be at. So just going back to bullying, because a lot of employees, they do say, I'm getting bullied because I'm on a PIP. Well, if it's a reasonable management action, you're not meeting the definition of bullying. If you are being bullied, meeting the definition of bullying, you can apply to the Fair Work Commission for an application to stop bullying at work. And that's essentially it. It's a stop bullying order, right? And there's a whole process, and I won't go into that because I don't have time. You can look it up online. Just go to the Fair Work Commission website. But there's an application form and it's a whole conciliations and all of that. So, the takeaway for me is don't be afraid of the B word. Like, understand, memorize, educate people on what bullying is. I think I've pushed that enough. Move on. All right. Oh boy. This one, difficult conversations. Please have them. I get it. I absolutely get it. Difficult conversations are difficult, There's so much involved. It's emotions, fear, don't like confrontation. However, around half, actually, that's probably an underestimate. Half of my matters could have been resolved by having a difficult conversation. Now, I probably shouldn't put that on the screen because it puts me out of a job. But, when I'm presented with, say, I do workplace investigations. So when I'm presented with a complaint and the allegations, I'm like, did anyone have if it's between 2 employees, for example, there's a complaint against another employee and then that other employee puts another complaint against them. I'm like, was there a facilitated discussion? Was there any discussion before we got to a workplace investigation stage? Oh, no. And I'm like, hey, all right, probably should have happened first, because a workplace investigation, that's a whole another topic, which will be in part 2. But, as soon as you say workplace investigation, the stakes go up. Everyone starts to freak out. It's like, I'm being investigated, whereas potentially the matter, and I'm not saying all of them, but potentially some of them, over half, that come across my desk could have been resolved through a difficult conversation. Now, I think it happens because people don't know how to have difficult conversations. Now, I'm not an expert on difficult conversations. There are so many people out there, gurus on it, not me, but I have some tips. Oh, okay, we'll just go into the examples first. So the big one, addressing inappropriate behaviour. The number of supervisors, managers who have let inappropriate behaviour just go. I mean, I'm doing 2 investigations for exactly that reason for years. It's just been let go because they didn't want to have a difficult conversation with the employee. Also providing feedback to a direct report. Does anyone know what the sandwich technique is? I find it offensive. That's a strong word, but it's been done on me before, and I've called it out. I'm like, are you doing the sandwich technique? Just for people who don't know what the sandwich technique is, everyone's nodding their head in the room. It's when a supervisor or manager will say something you're doing really well. That's the bread. Then the meat, I'm vegetarian, so the veggies in the middle is the bad part, thing you're doing wrong. And they'll end it with the good thing. Yeah, so we're in a sandwich. Just give me the feedback. Just give me the feedback straight up. I don't need to be mollycoddled in this situation. I'm here, just give me the feedback. But it's usually the manager that's making themselves feel better because they don't want to give the negative feedback, right? Of course, give positive feedback, but don't put it in a sandwich because you know what's coming. It's feel like you're being treated a bit like an idiot. So I'm not a fan. I think they came out in the 90s. It came out in the 90s. It's just people are cluey. You just don't treat people like that. I'm not a fan. Discussing redundancies and terminations. Yep, absolutely difficult conversations. Reporting misconduct and complaints. Again, what I spoke about before. Mediating disputes and conflict resolution. So if you're really opposed to difficult conversations, which hopefully by the end of this you might be a little bit more comfortable, get a professional to assist, because I still think they need to happen. Establishing boundaries with colleagues, that's awkward, in a workplace, especially if they're sitting right there. But it has to happen. Owning up to a mistake, big one. Ego gets in the way there. It's like, I don't make mistakes. And asking for a raise or promotion, that's a really big one as well. That's a difficult conversation, and one that needs to be prepared for. So as I said before, we've got a couple of tips. So 10 top tips. And look, there's probably a gazillion top tips. I don't know. But these ones seemed practical to me and you could apply them in a difficult conversation. The best piece of advice I have is do not procrastinate because it gets worse. So there's an example of one employee who put in a complaint. It ended up in a workplace investigation, but the complaint it was 12 years of complaints. And I had the brief. It was lengthy, hundreds of pages. And I was like, what? 12 years. 12 years of scotching up the complaints. And finally, here you go. Now, how are you supposed to deal with something that happened 12 years ago? Like it blew my mind. I'm telling you the worst case scenarios. This is, these are extreme examples, but it just indicates that that person, and I felt sorry for her, that person could not have a difficult conversation for 12 years. And then suddenly she just got to the end of her rope and went, here's my complaint. How do we resolve, how do we even deal with that? The majority of people weren't even still working in the same organization that she was complaining about. So it really was, was a crazy, crazy example. Don't procrastinate. So I've got fear versus the cost. So people, in my experience, don't have difficult conversations because they're scared. Scared of what the other person's going to say, scared of what the other person's going to think, got my confrontation. Are they going to reject me? Are they going to yell at me? Fear. This is the cost of not having it, right? So take, for example, a promotion or a raise. You're going in, you're afraid your manager could say no, right? Or you're not worth it, or, that's the fear. That stops you. What's the cost? You might get more money. So, yes, be prepared that an employer could say no. Absolutely. But get the fear away, because the cost outweighs the fear. Because what if they say, oh, my God, you've done such a great job. Here's another 10K. Thank you very much. I can go shopping, So fear versus cost. And you could even do a little table. List out your fears. List out the costs of not having the conversation. So you're over the fear. The costs are too high. You're going to do it. All right. So let's move on to point 2, top tip 2. Plan your talking points, but don't write a speech, because you need to be flexible. It's a conversation. It's not, and you're not at a lectern. You're not at going to do a presentation. You need to be prepared, but you need to be flexible, because you also don't know how the other person will respond. Focus on the facts. Try to put those emotions aside. Of course you feel emotional. Of course you do. Just focus on the facts. So at this time, at this date, you did this, right? Say it in a nice way, but focus on the facts. It removes the emotion from the conversation. I'm not saying it won't happen, but it's a good place to start. And consider how the other person perceives the conversation. Create a comfortable environment. That's like with any difficult situation, disciplinary matter, termination, anything. Always be comfortable in your environment. No interruptions, no thin walls, right? So no one can overhear, sorry, I'm out of frame, like a little glass up against the wall, I can hear everything. Yeah. Be confident and be empathetic. Think about how they would be feeling about the conversation, but still stand your ground. You've got this far. And remember to listen to what they say. Don't be in your head thinking what you're going to say next. Try and listen. Listen to understand what their perspective is. Discuss possible solutions. This is why you're having the difficult conversation, why you're putting yourself in this position to come out with some solutions. Is, the raise. Okay, I want 20. You're going to give me 10. Let's go in the middle, start negotiating, talk about solutions. And because I said emotions will be there, but be fully aware of your own emotions and try and control those. After the difficult conversation, reflect on how the conversation went. Get the learnings, rinse and repeat. All right. And the reason why I say that is because the key takeaway is don't procrastinate. So address the issue early to prevent it from escalating and put me out of a job. Thank you very much. I'm crazy. But practice. This doesn't come naturally to people. People don't, some do, they're amazing, but the majority of people, having a difficult conversation does not come naturally. So it's like training for a marathon. If I tried to run 40 Ks, I'd die without any training. Probably couldn't do it even with training, but practice, practice, practice. You need to practice these difficult conversations, even though they're not great, but you'll get better at them. You keep practicing and don't procrastinate. Okay, I love this quote. The best things in life are on the other side of a difficult conversation. Now, this could relate to every relationship you have in your life, not just your employment relationship. At home, with your kids, someone at school, like, every relationship. The best things in life are on the other side of a difficult conversation. He's a guru, by the way, if you want to check him out. All right, so we're 20 minutes to go. All right, we can do some questions. I'm not sure how that can work online.
Yes, let's switch stop.
So we can see people.
So online people and people in the room, if you've got any questions of Kendra, you've got basically an opportunity to ask her any questions that you'd like to know about, being in a workplace, some sticky situations that you might be in. Obviously, it's not legal advice, just reminding you of that, as Kendra's been very clear about, but she might be able to help you navigate or at least have a think about how to move forward. Marie-Louise.
Thanks, Kendra. Had a situation recently which actually was real bullying case. And after making sure that the organisation ensured that it did happen on multiple occasions, because first time it happened, classic, straight into the manager's office, no, it's bullying. So we got to a point where it was over multiple people, and it was documented, and we even had CCTV coverage of one of the incidents. So we had a case of clearly it was bullying. Manager had a discussion, person involved just completely denied it, totally denied it, even when produced with evidence, total denial. At what point would you suggest you take it beyond the Fair Work Commission and you actually go to other legislation, including the police or other, petty crimes or major crimes, because it becomes really difficult.
Yeah. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Okay, great. Yeah. If it's a criminal matter, absolutely.
Well, it wasn't actual sexual harassment, but it was sexualized bullying. And so while there was no physical actual crime, it was through bullying perceived that it could turn into a safety and security matter for the people involved.
So it sounds like a very serious matter. So just one question for you. Why was it denied when you had the evidence? It met the
person just totally denied that he did it. Not me. It's not me. I don't do those sorts of things. I just give people hugs and kisses because that's the sort of person I am.
So it's not about intention. It's about facts and evidence. So was a workplace investigation conducted?
Yep.
And the bullying was substantiated?
Well, that's when we found the CCTV evidence of one of the incidents, and we had 3 of the staff members actually document date, timestamp, and report it to manager. So we actually had 3 lots of evidence.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the bullying was substantiated in the workplace investigation?
Yes, but not by the perpetrator.
Well, irrelevant. Sorry, irrelevant. When you go through a workplace investigation, the evidence is analysed, and it's based on balance of probability, so it's not beyond reasonable doubt, which is the case in criminal proceedings. It's balance of probabilities. Is it more likely than not to have happened? It sounds like it was, quite clearly bullying happened. The next step is disciplinary action.
And disciplinary action could involve police. It could involve taking it to further.
Well, that would be a criminal. That would be the criminal side.
Criminal, yeah.
But the disciplinary action, and I don't know
absolutely.
I don't know the severity of it, but it could range from a warning right up until dismissal. depending on the severity. And that's, that's something that your policies and procedures would assist with. Depends on, has he done it before? Is it like, has there been other incidents with maybe other employees? It all depends on the severity of the matter. Yeah. On what disciplinary action will be taken. Yeah. So just because they're saying, I didn't do it, and you've gone through a formal process of an investigation and the bullying allegations are substantiated, that's it.
You've got Manfred's got his hand up.
Mm-hmm.
Manfred, go ahead.
Oh, hello. Sorry, I just wrote my questions in the chat, but I had two questions. The first one was, in terms of difficult conversations, where can we get better at it? Is there any training or any resources that you would recommend?
Yeah, look, Google difficult conversations. As I said, there are so many people online. Well, as I said, I'm not an expert in difficult conversations. It's not an area that I specialize in, but it's just come to my attention that, small matters blow up if people don't deal with them as they happen, almost as they happen. And this is the frustrating thing for me. Good, I get work out of it, but bad because I don't want employees to be going through that stress. So yeah, if you Google it, I'm not sure, there's like probably lots of coaches and lots of people in the territory. I'm thinking of a couple. Yeah, there's a lot out there, lots of information, lots of resources.
Yeah. And thank you. The other questions was about the sandwich technique, and I'm not too sure if I missed it, but why would it be a bad technique? And if it is, what would be the alternative technique to use? Yeah.
Don't use a technique. Be honest. Be compassionate. If there's negative feedback to give the negative feedback. I find the sandwich, and look, as I said, I might be wrong, but personally, I find the sandwich technique offensive because the manager's not doing it for me. They're doing it to make themselves feel better about giving me negative feedback. So it's like, just like a sandwich, buttering me up on one side to get ready for the negative feedback. I would prefer to just be upfront with the negative feedback and then give me the positive feedback, or start with the positive feedback and give me the negative, but don't then give me the positive just to, make themselves feel better because they said some negative feedback about me. It's just be straightforward, be upfront, and, it's about, again, having that difficult conversation and using those tips on how to do it. And it doesn't involve the sandwich technique. It's probably used all over, but, I'm not a fan.
Yeah, I think it's being used because there's so much burden put on managers, line managers, and leaders. And sometimes when you're not an expert in all the laws and stuff, you kind of get into this conversation with fear. I think that's it. But yeah, that's the thought out there.
Did you say fear?
Yes.
Yeah, fear is the big one. Fear is the driver for not having the difficult conversation. Absolutely. That's the massive driver.
Okay. Thank you for answering my questions.
Thank you.
I have a question, Kendra.
Yes.
Or other people are thinking of theirs. So we talk about fear as being a driver, and I don't know that many people have actually had a conversation that has gone badly, but have you got an example of a situation that you've experienced where someone did have that conversation and it didn't work out for them? Is that fear based on anything?
It's based on emotions, and it's
But what I'm saying is, we tend to go to worst case scenario, but in all your experience of 30 years, have you actually have you had a case brought to you where someone's had a difficult conversation that's gone badly, or in most cases, when the difficult conversations have been had, has it worked out okay?
It all depends on how skilled you are. Absolutely. And to be honest, the majority of people aren't that skilled at it. So yes, things can go wrong in a difficult conversation, which is why can't bring up the slide, but, you need to prepare. The Kwame, the guru who I put the quote up for before, he says that if you're going to ask for a raise, you start preparing 3 months in advance. It's not, 5-minute prep before you go into the manager's office, knock, knock, knock. Oh, have you got 5 minutes? I want a raise. No, it's not that. He says that you need to have the initial conversation 3 months in advance about, okay, boss, what do I need to do? How do I need to perform? What KPIs do I need to meet to get me to a 20K rise by the end of June 30? They tell you, then you do it. And then you have the difficult conversation with, okay, boss, 3 months ago, you told me I need to do this, 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 and this to get this raise. I just did that. Now let's have the conversation. Because you prepared for it. Right? They could still say no. It depends on how the organization's going, but you've prepared for it and you've got a bloody good case that, hey, you told me what to do and I've done it and, this is what I want now. So, yeah, it's preparing for it. Yeah.
And Joe
Kristen,
my question is that definition of bullying was really interesting, quite a long list. The one that really struck me was the one around giving people work below their skill level. And I'm wondering if there's the opportunity for that to be used a little bit maliciously in terms of people saying, oh, I'm not going to do filing because that's below my skill level, or just interested if you could flesh that one out a bit.
Yeah.
Boundaries are on that one.
Yeah. It all depends on the what does a job description say?
Yeah.
I love job descriptions, by the way. People please put job descriptions in place. And I love the last line of a job description and any other duties that are deemed necessary to complete the tasks. That it is. It's more because we're talking about bullying, which is unreasonable, which creates a psychological risk and potential injury to the person. Exactly. So, if an employer is doing that maliciously, potentially it could meet the definition of bullying. So, yeah. This is the thing about employment. It all depends, it all depends on the circumstances. And I love that about my job because it keeps it really interesting, particularly in the territory, which I love. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you find that there are any particular, industries or sectors that you work with more than others in terms of, investigations and cases like that?
Yeah. I work across all sectors, but I love working with Aboriginal corporations. Love them. It's my passion. I feel that I can give the most value when I'm working in an Aboriginal corporation. Some of them don't even have HR at all. So, these poor managers, they're just doing the best that they can. And, some of the things that happen, they're just like, oh, how do I deal with it? And but they don't even have HR. It's devastating for me. So I love working in that space. I had a few clients, regular clients who, that's the ideal. You have regular clients who actually listen to me and do what I tell them to do, which I love. But a couple of the regular clients, what I would do for them is when something was tricky, they were like, oh, I'm not sure about this, this is happening. I would ask them to give me a call for a sanity check. Just do a sanity check with me. Because this is my space. I can identify potential issues and hopefully minimize them for the organisation and, help that way. So that sanity check, and I trained a number of my regular clients, they were doing that. And that's where, with my new business, I want to get into that space again, where I have my regular clients, particularly the Aboriginal corporations, where they just pick up the phone and say, look, this is happening. What do you think? And we go, okay, we can need to go down this path or this path. Yeah. So sanity check. All right.
Okay.
Any no other questions?
Well, if there are no other questions,
Can we put the last slide back on so I can just talk a little bit about what's next in part 2? Oops. I'm hoping that everyone found that useful. Again, just my experience. You can take from it what you will or reject what you don't like. If you don't like what I said, just reject it. Yeah, next one. Last one. Okay, hopefully everyone can see that. So I think it's on Friday the 12th of September. That's potentially the date. Yeah. Anne's nodding. Yes. Okay, next time, let's talk about these workplace investigations because I think that there's a lot of anxiety around workplace investigations. You know, I'm used to being hated, but I'm not hated as much when I'm the investigator. I mean, they don't want to talk to me usually. So yeah, I just sort of talk about workplace investigations a little bit more. Positive duty, this relates to discrimination or sex-based discrimination, sexual harassment. There's a recent positive duty on employers to ensure that a workplace is safe. The big one, menopause leave. There's all women in the audience. I don't know about some men. There's some men online, but I got to talk about this. I'm in the throes of this. This is one of my little passion projects, menopause leave. A number of very high level professional women have left their positions because it's too much. Menopause is a real thing, as we all know. 50% of the population go through it, and it needs to be prioritised within the workplace. Now, there's some organisations already putting menopause leave into place, and there's a whole bunch of discussion about it. And I'm pleased to say that I think one of the top tier legal firms put menopause leave into place. So if they can do it, like, wow, I was blown away by that. Really, really positive move for women in the workplace. And then just let's talk a little bit about toxic workplaces, which is what I deal with on a daily basis. All right, but subject to change because I might get inspired by something else. So, yeah. All right. Thank you. Oh, we're a little bit early, but that's good. All right.
So I just wanted to thank Kendra for her time today and to thank all of you online for joining us and also for the people in the room. It's always fantastic to get a little bit more knowledge about how we can better manage and navigate the workplace. So this is a really amazing topic for us all to get our heads around and at least get a little bit of basic information so you know when you might be going into that difficult place and you can actually get some professional advice involved. As Kendra said in her last slide, that is subject to change. One of the things that Kendra and I talked about as we were planning this session was about whether people might want to give us some advice about topics that they would like to hear about. So if you do want to, between now and September, when Kendra's preparing for her talk, if you've got some ideas for topics, please feel free to reach out. I'm really happy to take those on board and for Kendra and I to have a chat about those.
And that's the purpose. That's the purpose of the presentation today, is just to provide a little bit of value. If you didn't find that valuable, maybe suggest a topic that you would like me to speak to in the employment space. I'll do my own plug. If you want to contact me, Kendra at employmentlawsolutions.com.au, and my mobile's up there as well. And so thank you, everybody.
For those of you that might want to watch the talk again, it will be up on the Animico YouTube channel in the next week or so. So if you are looking for that, or if you would like to recommend it to others, please feel free to do so as well. And I will look forward to seeing you all at our next event. So thank you all for coming today, and thanks online. Thanks, Kendra.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.